Hi everyone, Stepan here. We finally have a game. Okay, the last game I lost and I stood no chance because my opponent played perfectly, not that I played well. This is game 49 and we're playing the advanced Caro-Kann, obviously the short variation. My opponent's playing very quickly, so am I. So let's hope we get a good position. My opponent is Omusini with a 1500 bullet rating. I guess they don't play bullet a lot. Okay, knight d2 is normal. I'm gonna play knight c8. We're playing one of the main lines. Knight b3. Okay. Knight b3 immediately. Okay, I'm gonna go bishop e7. My opponent should play c4 or a4 at some point. Otherwise, maybe c3. Yeah, this is slightly odd already. Perhaps my opponent wants to go bishop d3. I don't think I should be afraid of this setup. So if I go c5, my opponent probably doesn't want to go c4. But maybe they do, so I'm gonna castle first before I play c5. I can also play for f6 now because my opponent has left this knight on b3. Usually the plan with knight c8 is to go knight a7, knight b5, knight c7, knight d5. So I'm gonna try to transfer my knight to c7 before I play c5. But I can also play f6 immediately. f6. Does that fail to knight h4? Perhaps. Perhaps. f6, knight h4, fe5, knight h5, fe5, knight f5, ef5, d5, knight e5. Seems like I win a pawn. So f6, knight h4, fe5, knight f5, ef5, d5, I guess, knight e5. Seems good to me. Let's go over it again. f6, what else can my opponent do? f6, I'm expecting knight h4. f6, knight h4, fe5. If d5, then knight e5. Well, actually on f6, knight h4, fe5, knight f5, I play rook f5. And then if bishop d3, let's say rook f7, queen h5, do I have g6? I think I do. So I'm playing f6. In the Caro-Kann, you either play c5 or f6. My opponent's playing against c5, so I'm gonna go f6. If bishop d3 straight away, I think I trade and take on e5. Bishop f4. Okay, so my opponent wants to recapture with a piece on e5. That's understandable. However, if they take with the knight, I definitely have bishop c2 if I want to win the dark squared bishop, because that's a tempo on the bishop. So fe5, if knight e5, bishop c2, queen c2, rook f4. Or I could just take twice and play bishop f6 and play for e5. I could also go bishop e4 or bishop g4. Ooh, bishop g4 is interesting. Bishop g4 threatening to play fe5 And then knight e5, bishop e2, queen e2, rook f4. Well, that's interesting. I kind of like bishop g4 though. Bishop g4, if e f6, then bishop f6. If then knight e5, bishop e2, queen e2, and my opponent's defending e5 multiple times, so maybe that's not a good move. Too bad I don't have any very good discoveries with my f5 bishop. Okay, I'm taking fe5. And I will consider bishop moves later. So, is trading my light squared bishop for the dark squared bishop a good idea? I do have bishop c2. I may also choose to play bishop d6. I can also just take and go bishop d6. I don't want to play bishop c2. I've made up my mind. I don't want to weaken the light squares. Interesting. I don't know what the best plan is. I'm looking at bishop d6, but there's actually knight f7, and then rook f7, bishop d6. If I go bishop f6, then... well, that seems okay. I'm gonna go bishop f6. I don't see any good discoveries with the knight. I want to force my opponent to recapture with the d-pawn. Now I'm guessing the knight should go back, but maybe there's something else. Maybe there is g4, but on g4 I play bishop e5. How am I 5 minutes down on the clock after one long thing? So if my opponent plays knight f3, okay, they took, that's fine. I was saying if they play knight f3, what does this do? Probably wants to go bishop d6 if I go queen f7. Probably. So I'm gonna go queen e7 so that I'm defending b7, and on e5 there is no d5 because of queen takes knight. Or there is d5, but we trade pawns. Definitely e5 will undermine the knight. So let's have a look at e5. e5, bishop e5 loses a piece. d5, queen c5, ef6, rook f6, and I'm on the f7 pawn if my bishop moves away. But there may be bishop e3. If I go b6, my opponent's gonna go knight d3. And I think that's the move they should have played previously. Okay, back to e5. e5, d5, queen c5, ef6, rook f6. That seems bad and scary. I'm wasting too much time. I could just go for multiple trades, but in the end, there's knight d7. So e5, d5, bishop e5. If my opponent's e2 bishop moves away, I can play queen c5. If bishop e5, queen e5, bishop d3, let's say, then I lose, I guess. Whoa, I'm 10 minutes down on the clock. I'm gonna have to speed up. I also have to develop my pieces. I have to play knight b6. Yeah, I think I have to play knight b6. I think I have to develop. I don't think e5 works. I need to connect my rooks. Oh yeah, that just wins the e-pawn. Perhaps. So bishop d3, rook e6, queen f7, queen d3, bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, queen takes f4. I have to go for that. I don't see an alternative. Oh, they took queen d3. Okay, now this is slightly different. Now I may have e5. So e5. If d5, then queen c5. e5, if bishop e5, then bishop e5, and on rook e5, what do I do? So maybe I just go queen f7 first. Yeah, queen f7 first, and then rook e6. I've bishop d4, and on knight e6, rook e8, knight c5. Yeah, I don't have that. So either give up a pawn with e5, or I give up a pawn with queen f7, knight e6, rook f e8, knight c5. Awful position. Okay, I'm gonna play e5, because I think that could be the best move. So I'm expecting bishop e5, and on bishop e5, rook e5, queen f7, I'm hoping I'll have knight c4 at the end of the line. My opponent's playing instantly and really well. Alright, let's get rid of this knight. Maybe I can still save this. Of course I'm much worse, but I'm gonna try to save the game. I hate it when people play this quickly. I get very distracted. I'm going into blitz mode now because I have 3 minutes on the clock. That's a weird move. That's a weird move. Wants to play knight f4 most likely. Okay, so let's gain a tempo if we can. I'm just trying to centralize my queen. My opponent's gonna go rook e1. And I don't want to trade, I want to go rook e6 when that happens. So that I can keep controlling the e-file. And I also want to play against knight f4. So can I get away with knight e3? Knight e3, rook e1, queen d3, knight f4, queen c3. Knight e3, rook e1, queen d3, queen e2. I can take on c3. Maybe. Oof, seems very scary. Very scary. Well, I have to do it. I mean, I'm gonna lose unless I do something active. I'm probably gonna lose anyway, but this is at least keeping my pieces well placed. I know I'm going into a self-pin. But I don't see a simple way for my opponent to exploit that, so... I have 1 minute against 11 minutes. Am I so slow and so bad? We keep fighting. No giving up. This is still anyone's game. I have to sort out this pen, but... I want to play rook e7, so I have the option to go knight f5 to one pin. I don't think my opponent can save the c-pawn. I mean, of course, rook c1 is possible, but then I actually have knight d1, and I'm coming very close to actually winning the game. Because once the queen moves, I'd have queen e3 check, picking up the rook on c1. So queen e2 seems reasonable. I don't see too many alternatives. Rook c1, okay. Now do I have knight d1? Knight d1, queen c2, queen e3. Knight f2 doesn't work because I take it. Knight d1. Queen f1. Okay, this seems to work. I don't see why it wouldn't work. I don't see where the queen should go. Rook c1 is a very bad move, I feel. Because on queen c2, there's queen e3 check. And that's going to be mate. Maybe I'm winning now. Yeah, I think I'm winning now. What? No, on queen c2 I have rook e1. Checkmate. The queen has to stay on g3 or on h4, and then I play queen e3 and I pick up the rook. That's the end of the game. Yeah, I'm winning. Yes, come on. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think I'm missing something. Knight f4 doesn't work, because I take on f2. And on knight d3 I play knight takes d3. And I'm just up a knight. I think this is the end of the game. And of course, rook takes d1 makes no sense, because on queen takes d1, queen f1, I have rook e1. Winning immediately. There's no defense. There is no defense. Yeah, I don't see a defense. Perhaps the best move is knight f4, just giving up a full knight. Yeah. Yeah, now I'm easily winning. Whew, yes, come on! So knight e2 check, king, knight, rook c1. Yeah, that works. Yeah, okay, this is not great. Easily winning. Now it's just, oh, come on. I'm so happy I played knight e3. I'm so happy I saved the game in time trouble. How do I save my pawn? I want to save my pawn. I don't want to give up pawns. So I plan to go rook e6 now. I don't want to allow any counterplay. Enough stress for one game. If my opponent moves the f pawn, I'm playing knight e8, f6, e4. And that should be a great consolidating move. I can also, of course, play knight a6, knight b4. My opponent wants to go b5, so... Yeah, let's just get my knight out of the way so that I can take on b5. I want my knight on c4. Now I want my knight on e4. I don't think I can hang any mates. I don't think there's many tricks in this position. I'm down to a minute, so I'm gonna have to be careful, but I doubt that there will be much trouble. I want my king guarding my c-pawn. If b5 now, I can play c5, of course, because I have a knight on e4. Okay, so c5 doesn't work yet, but now I can slowly start liberating my rook by playing rook f6. Before that, I want to prevent g5. Okay, I'm gonna play rook f6 and rook f7. Because I want my knight on d6, so that I can target f5. Sorry for not talking, I'm stressed. I think this is fine. I don't see what my opponent's gonna do. So I'm just gonna pick up all the pawns. Yeah, okay, this was a mistake. My opponent wants to go rook f7. So let's just prevent that. Now also rook f6 doesn't work because I have rook e8 in the end. Rook b7 doesn't work because of king d6. And now I can start pushing my pawns. I think we're safe now. I think there are no more tricks. So let's see, d4, rook f6, gf6, g7 I take, that's fine. Sorry for not talking, I'm trying not to mess the game up. Oh, and now I just lost a pawn. But we can do this. And pick up the f pawn. Okay. If you're like me and you think practicing against the engine is boring because it either crushes you or plays like an idiot, try playing against Noctie. Noctie is a human-like AI that's going to adapt to your strength, is going to play like a human, try to trick you like a human, and challenge you on your own level. The first thing you can do is, of course, assess your rating, and you can play a rating test against Noctie. Yeah, the only move is g4 and then queen f4 mate. Yeah. Good. Yes! 2557! Come on! It's going to tell you your strength, but there are many, many more features. The first thing is, when you play Noctie, you get instant feedback, and all of your moves will get sort of color-coded. Noctie will immediately tell you if you made a mistake. That way you can ask Noctie to see where you went wrong. You can play games in openings you're trying to learn. So you can import any repertoire you want and play Noctie in that specific opening. Just go to repertoires. I've imported the Hillbilly when I was doing the video on the Hillbilly, but you can obviously create any repertoire. Just paste the PGN, and if you, for example, play the London system, you can play the London system against Noctie. Flashcards are an excellent tool, and I've spoken to Samuel, the owner and inventor of Noctie. He's going to make them even better. Flashcards are basically the mistakes you made in your games. Noctie is going to make you pay attention to them, and in the future they're going to be grouped according to theme, so it's going to be even easier to navigate your mistakes. One of my favorite features, if not my favorite one, and the one I use the most, is themes. So you can play Noctie in any specific position you choose. So if you go to your themes, you can see that I've made quite a few. So let's say you want to play out this position. This is a position from Spassky's game where he triangulated perfectly. If you're trying to practice something, you can create a new theme. Just add an FEN or a PGN, and play it out against Noctie. That way, if you have an endgame you would like to practice, you don't have to find an actual human to play against, nor will you have to play against a 2800 engine or against a 500 engine human. If you would like to check Noctie out, you can follow the link in the description. And if you would like to get a 64% discount, use the code HANGINGPawns. Thank you very much for this. Thank you, Noctie, for sponsoring the video. And let's get back. Ooh, 91. 91 worked. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Let's see. A ton of comments. E6 is very weak. Pawn down for Stepan. His opponent is playing really fast. Go Stepan, full attack. I feel this pin can be deadly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Let's see. So let's see about the theory here first. So bishop e7. I don't know c3. I know a4. Okay, castles. Oh, knight b6 is played. Is f6 bad? No, f6 is okay. fe5 is okay. Knight e5. Knight e5. Okay, knight e5 would have been better. Bishop d6 would have been better. But on bishop d6 I was afraid of knight f7. Rook f7. Oh, Jesus. d6 is defended by the knight on c8. I didn't even see that. Okay, and white is better. Oof. My position was extremely tough. I feel like I had to give up a pawn. And d5 is okay. Rook e8 is bad. Queen f7, my opponent plays knight e6. Okay. My opponent should have played rook e1. Okay, now when I gained this tempo I began feeling slightly better. Knight e3. Yeah, knight e3 is losing. Let's figure out why. Queen d3. I was expecting queen e2. But apparently it doesn't work. Yeah, because I can take on c3. The engine plays queen b2. And my opponent played rook c1, which is dreadful. Yeah. Knight f4 has to be the best move. Everything else leads to mate. Queen f1, there's queen e3. Yeah, now I made it more interesting than it should have been. Definitely, my opponent fought well. g5 is interesting. I mean, it was winning the whole time, but it felt like I had problems to solve. Yeah, and once I prevented rook f7, I felt safe. Yeah, now I felt safe. Yeah, okay. Okay, so my opponent had one blunder, I had one mistake and 3 inaccuracies. Well, it didn't feel that way. It felt like I was losing. But okay. Whew. Thank you guys for watching. This was a very stressful game. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.